IELTS Speaking Questions Part 2. In this video, I'm sharing current speaking questions for the IELTS speaking test.
That is, unless any of you got anything better to do.
These are new questions introduced in January 2020. It's important that you see these current questions so that you can be well prepared for your test, so that you can avoid nasty surprises of getting an unexpected question, so that you can prepare your answers, so that you can prepare vocabulary to impress the examiner. If you know the questions before you take the test, you're going to do a lot better. Now, just like last year, I have divided these questions into 5 themes. I like these 5 themes: people, places, things, activities, experiences. Okay? By dividing the questions into these 5 themes, we can work more efficiently and effectively. Let me just give you a quick overview of what's included in the rest of the video. I'm going to show you new questions in 2020. I'm going to give you some model answers for these questions. Then I'm going to give you some ideas for answering this type of question.
Now, everybody else happy with my little plan?
Describe a uniform you have worn. Well, it's quite difficult for me to talk about uniforms because I haven't really worn a lot of uniforms. When I was a child, my school didn't require us to wear a uniform. However, there is one time that I did have to wear a uniform, and this was a time when I wore a soldier's uniform at the weekend. What happened is I went on this weekend excursion, and the point of it was to do a bit of military training for the New Zealand Army. Let me describe this uniform a bit to you. Well, first of all, we wore a black beret with a kind of silver emblem on it of the unit that we were representing. And then the rest of the uniform was quite drab and boring looking, really. Basically, we're wearing olive green sweaters and pants, and then we had a kind of khaki collared shirt on underneath this. Oh, and I should also mention the boots. We wore heavy black boots which we had polished up the night before. I thought it was going to be a fun experience, but actually it turned out to be quite boring. We had to get up at the crack of dawn, stand in a line, and then the sergeant had us marching up and down the square. It was quite a dull way to spend the weekend, and at the end of it my feet ached like hell. I didn't really enjoy this experience, and I didn't really enjoy having to wear a uniform. And to be honest, I hope I never have to do this sort of thing ever again. Describe a time you saw an interesting animal.
The most interesting animal I have ever seen was a kangaroo in the middle of a highway. My friends and I were driving to see a movie about 2 strangers who go on a series of adventures in outer space. When all of a sudden, up ahead was this creature hopping along the road. As we got closer, we identified the curious animal as a brown kangaroo that was particularly mischievous. This was interesting, as kangaroos don't normally wander onto the road and disrupt traffic. Furthermore, it seemed to understand how roads function, as it managed to cross many roads completely unharmed. It took over 10 minutes for people to stop recording videos of the kangaroo and call animal services. It took another 20 minutes before they finally arrived, and by then, the news crew had set up posts and the radio in the car was providing in-time updates of the animal's actions, location, and mannerisms. Although my friends and I missed the first showing of the movie, it was worth it to see the events unfold.
Describe a piece of important news you got by text message or email.
With today's technology, we get inundated with countless news stories, texts, advertising, and spam. I usually wait until I have lots of spare time on my hands to read through the messages, as I prefer to reply through my computer rather than my smartphone. A couple of months ago, however, I had a nagging feeling that some communication was wanting my attention, so I went online during my coffee break to check my messages. While scrolling through the list of senders and subjects that I would reply to that night, there was one email that stood out, as it was from a friend who I had not seen for a long time. It was a short message that said he would be in my neck of the woods that day and we should meet up. Our past communications have mainly been casual birthday and holiday wishes, so I was excited to catch up with him. I emailed back to him and invited him to meet at a restaurant that evening. Our evening was great, as we had a terrific meal and exchanged stories and adventures. The importance of this communication is that I learned about many past acquaintances and vowed to do as my friend had done, contact some of my past friends that I had not communicated with recently.
Describe an article on health you have read.
Recently read an article on what foods to eat and avoid for a healthy body, and it provided recipes for the healthy food ingredients. The article also suggested that eating better would improve my energy level, so I searched for exercise and fitness. Scanning my search results, I found an article on outdoor exercises as opposed to a gym workout. The article outlined the advantages of outdoor exercise. For example, you will likely enjoy it more, save a lot of money, and benefit from the sun. All exercise workouts start with a warm-up by stretching, squats, and push-ups to warm up your muscles. The routine suggested a brisk walk, and since I needed to go to the market to buy those healthy food items I had read about earlier, I grabbed my shopping bag and walked to the market. With 3 kilos more weight I was carrying, I returned home at a slower pace. Climb stairs, they say. Well, my apartment is on the 3rd floor, so I had no choice. When I finally got to my place, I was winded and felt I had done enough for the first day. I read the rest of the article and found it very interesting with other exercises and routines that I tried on other days. I believe these lifestyle changes are improving my health and well-being.
Describe something you bought that was difficult to use at first.
One of the hardest items to learn and become familiar with was my first smartphone I purchased many years ago. I had to transition from my simple cell, which I used for texting and the odd phone call, to, in my opinion, a complicated and unnecessary luxury. My friends would chuckle as I pulled out my old phone, as they all had newer technology. I resisted their teasing and recommendation to keep up with the times. There came a time, however, when my cell service provider updated their equipment and would no longer support my older technology. Deciding which phone to buy was difficult, as there were specifications and features I did not understand. I read reviews and listened to advice from friends, and finally decided on a make and model I wanted. Fortunately, the desired phone was coming on sale, and I made my decision to purchase the latest Samsung model from the Samsung retailer at my local shopping center. The challenge started with a gadget that I was totally unfamiliar with, but with the internet and help from my friends, I overcame the difficulties. Upgraded a few times over the years, use it daily, and never leave home without my phone.
Describe a job that you would not like to do in the future.
I I was walking to the supermarket recently to purchase some items for dinner. I noticed a section of road near the sidewalk that was blocked off with traffic cones and rope. The traffic was backed up as it maneuvered around the obstacle. Curiosity got the best of me, so I stopped to see what was happening. I observed the sewer maintenance crew wearing dirty coveralls and hard hats, working on the sewer system. They had the sewer cover off, and I saw one crew member climbing down the pipe. Although they actually get paid, I'm sure, very well, that job would be the most undesirable that I could imagine. I am not a physical person and prefer to work in an office, so this kind of work would not appeal to me. I am sure it would be very warm in the summer and extremely cold in the winter to work in a wet and enclosed environment. For me, working outdoors without the comfort of air conditioning and central heating would be unbearable. I can only imagine how filthy the crew would be after a day's work and how bad the locker room would smell when the crew would shower and change clothes for their commute home. Time watching the men work, I had to take a step back as I smelt the stench coming from the system. I can only imagine how filthy and smelly the crew would be after a hard day's work. I'm sure there are worse jobs, but I think I would dislike this one the most.
Describe a successful small company you know about.
Still attending university, I asked my job if he knew of any part-time jobs that might be available to help with my expenses. He had a friend that had a warehouse and retail business that might have a vacancy. He called his friend, inquired about possible employment. Asking when I might be available for an interview, he made an appointment for me. When I arrived at the warehouse, I noticed it was substantial but not huge. The owner outlined the product mix that included pet and farm animal foods, fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, farm and garden tools, and supplies like fencing wire and posts. My job was to be working on the weekend and during holidays in the warehouse loading pallets with feed and other items that local farmers had ordered for delivery. Back-breaking work, but I soon built up my body and stamina and worked in the warehouse until my graduation. The owner offered me a job working in the office, making up packing slips for the warehouse and invoicing and accounting after I had graduated. I would say the owner's sons are workaholics as they are on site from morning to night. Business has grown due to good customer service, prompt delivery, and a well-stocked operation with the necessary products for pet owners and farmers.
Let's move on now and have a look at some ideas for answering this type of question.
What would you rather be doing, Atkinson?
Well, I'm learning the piano.
Learning the piano?
A lot of topics relate to things, something you bought, something that was expensive, something you lost, something you found, a gift you received, a gift you gave someone else. If you're prepared to talk about your smartphone, this can be used for a wide range of topics. If you want to get some adjectives and describing words to talk about your smartphone, go online and look at some advertising. See how the manufacturer is trying to convince you about what a wonderful phone this is. When we're talking about a thing, we can think about a wide range of aspects. If we think about these aspects, it'll make it easy to have enough to say when talking about a thing. We can also prepare some language for some of these aspects. Let's see what they are. The size. Is it big? Is it small? Is it enormous? Is it tiny? The colour. And remember, you don't want colours just like red and blue. If we look at this smartphone, it's a Well, I went online and I had a look, and I think this is called a champagne pink. So champagne is like the drink champagne, and then we have a pink champagne as well, and that is the same color as this phone. So we could say it's pink, that's okay, but if we say that the color is pink champagne, then that's impressive, and you might get a higher score for vocabulary. We can talk about the texture. This phone looks like it has a smooth, flat texture. We can talk about the weight. Is it heavy? Is it light? We could describe it as being feather light. So as light as a feather, feather light. What sort of material is it made out of? Have a look what the advertiser says. What sort of glass does it use? Maybe it's a titanium case. Titanium is a type of metal. The age of the item. Is it new? Is it old? How long have we had it for? The shape of the item. With this phone, we can see how it's got curved, beveled edges. So we could describe this when we're describing our phone. We can also maybe talk about why this item is special to us. What's the reason why it's special? Maybe it was a gift from friend or family. If it's something old, it might be an heirloom. An heirloom is something that is passed down from generation to generation. Let's now look at a few adjectives and see how we can use adjectives to describe things. First of all, we've got the word tiny. Tiny means very small. If we look at the stars through a telescope, they look tiny. Of course, they're gigantic, enormous, huge, but when we look through the microscope, they look tiny. If something's even smaller than tiny, we might describe it as microscopic, so small that we need a microscope to see it. Something like some cells or some algae or something like that. How about some adjectives for describing something that's big like this sandwich? Well, we could describe it as being enormous, gigantic, or massive. All adjectives that mean big. We want to prepare some high-level colours to impress the examiner. Let's look at the colours of a rainbow and see which ones might be impressive. The first four, red, orange, yellow, green, nothing impressive here. However, the last two are. Let's look at the next two. We've got indigo. Indigo is that bluish coloured one. This is high-level language. We've got violet, which is the purple looking colour. Use words like indigo and violet wherever you can to increase your score for vocabulary. Here are a couple more colours that you can use. We've got magenta, which is a light purplish red. We've got turquoise, which is a greenish blue. Again, high-level language. We want to use words like this in our test. Let's come back to our smartphone and think about how we might describe our smartphone and how we might use some language to increase our score for vocabulary. We could describe it as rose pink. I think I mentioned champagne pink earlier. They're almost the same. So rose pink, champagne pink. Rose pink is like a rose, a pink rose. We could talk about the tiny front-facing camera. That's the small camera that faces us that we use for taking selfies. We can talk about the smooth, curved edges. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please like it so that will help this video to rank better and enable people such as yourself to see this video. Please subscribe to me if you'd like to get alerts of my upcoming videos as I produce them and as I upload them. Best of luck with your study in 2020.